How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to another installment of Tech Support Thursday. And yes, I am well aware that it is Friday. I apologize. My Thursday was absolutely jam-packed. So I think it was a 14 or a 15-hour day yesterday. But that's the life of as a consultant working for a rather large Cisco partner. I'm going to start off with some of the comments that were left, comments/questions from last week's Tech Support Thursday, and then we will work our way through. And I'll try to do my best to try to answer the questions as best as I can, and stuff like that. Hi Rob. Regarding my question about the spokes connected to different hubs, I didn't want you to do my job. I only needed guidance. So sometimes comments I make in the videos are, I won't say taken out of context, but I can sound a little short or blunt, and it's not my intention. But I appreciate the response. I feel like there's a level of respect. My idea is to create VRFs and create separate tunnel interfaces in the DMBPN, which each tunnel pointing out to one of the VRFs, and these tunnels will point out to the different Nextop server and NHRP. Am I in the right track? That sounds right. So typically, and I'm not sure if this is what you're trying to do, but what it sounds like to me is, and how I've seen it done. And you can clarify if I'm right or wrong. Is typically speaking, the VRF is going to be what they call a front door VRF or an FVRF, where you configure the interface facing the WAN, whether that's internet or DMB or MPLS or whatever the underlay is, whatever the transport between the DMBPN devices is. Typically, that's placed into a VRF to do traffic isolation. So, for example, if you're terminating the internet, whether it's a BGP peering, just a default route, whatever the case might be, you are pointing to that interface, and it's a VRF enabled interface. I'm not sure if that's what you're trying to do, and then tie the tunnel to that VRF as a source of the tunnel. I think that's what you're talking about on a per tunnel basis. And if you're trying to do that is a good way of doing it. That's how you can do what they call a front door VRF and a backdoor VRF, or I'm sorry, inside door VRF. And the idea of the inside door VRF is if you have a DMBPN hub or spoke that you're doing front door VRF on, and basically the reason why you do a front door VRF is you want to keep the routing that's happening in the underlay that's providing you connectivity between your DMBPN devices out of the different routing tables that are on your box. So you'd have the internet VRF, for example, or the iNet VRF, and then you would tie the tunnel source to that VRF. And then if you wanted to do inside door VRF, where you've got multi-tenancy, where you want to try to isolate traffic between whoever you're connected to. I've seen this happen a couple of times in like a co-location data center, where DMBPN is like a secondary or a tertiary WAN service. So you have internet as a primary, and maybe MPLS as a secondary, and then like DMBPN as a tertiary. So yes, that is a good idea to do, and commonly deployed. I'm working with a customer right now that has a lot of DMVPN deployed, and that's exactly how they're doing it. Does it make sense to put my home lab experience into CV, which he's referencing as his resume? Stuff like pfSense, ESXi server, RAIDs, unified mesh wireless network, since I am still in high school and have no real-world experience. So yes, in this case, I would. And it's because of the fact that you have no real-world experience and you're leveraging your lab building experience of playing around with the technologies in a real-world sense, and then applying that same, the process of going through learning how to configure whatever the device is and get it working for your specific needs, which would be meeting a customer's expectations and the customer's requirements. Yes, I absolutely would do that. Somebody that's in the industry and maybe has a couple of years of experience, you could put that as technologies learned. Like once you're established in the industry, whether you're, maybe help desk, desktop support, level 1, maybe you haven't gotten quite into network engineering or systems engineering yet, you could put anything new that you're learning, right? At the very top of my resume, I have a section of technologies, and I forget exactly the wording I put into the caption, but basically, I list out all of the technologies I am comfortable working with on a regular basis, and there's a lot of them. And as I learn new skills, whether it's, for example, I'm spending a lot of time in the data center on Nexus and NSX and data center and vSAN, VDI, DCNM or Nexus dashboard for stuff like that, and a little bit of ACI, stuff like that. I'm putting all those new technologies that I'm learning in my resume because guess what? Even though I've got a full-time job and I work for a rather large partner, I still am furthering my skill sets. So in the event that something happened where I ended up having to go back into the job market, whether it's my fault or otherwise, I still have tangible skills and I can say, okay, well, since I started, since the last time I updated my resume, I've learned these new technologies, XYZ, and they applied in these particular situations. And I'll be able to talk to real world experience with them. So yes, I would absolutely do that. What do you think about the Dev Expert cert? And they're referencing the DevNet Expert. I think it's a good idea. So I'll never talk bad about anything just because I don't like it. I'm not somebody that does a lot of development work, so I'm not somebody that goes out and does, works with Python or NetMiko or any other automation style tool. And if I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, it's because I really don't. That's not an area that I'm familiar with. So, with that being said, if you have an interest in that, I would say absolutely go after it. If that's the direction you want to go with your career, absolutely. I don't know how that would apply in the real world. I still think that the development world. So for example, bringing development or some sort of level of automation or coding into the networking space is still relatively new. I mean, it's been around for a few years now, and it's starting to gain traction. But there's been a lot of other trends that have come into the industry. For example, software-defined networking. Whether you're talking about NSX, whether you're talking about ACI, whether you're talking about using a GUI to deploy networks, which is kind of what your thing falls into the same bucket. I would say that if that's something you want to go after, by all means, go after it. I hope you do really well and you smash it and you become one of the first CC DevEs. I really have no idea what that cert's going to look like when you get it, but yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great idea if that's something you want to go do. I personally don't have any reason to go after it because I'm starting to deal with more and more automation in terms of using a GUI to deploy large-scale networks. For example, using DCNM to deploy an entire VXLAN fabric and connect it to the outside world, do multi-site VXLAN and large-scale data centers and stuff like that. That is something I'm starting to work with because of the clients that I'm working with. So, hi Rob, we have 2 independent data centers, and the idea would to make them redundant to provide HA on specific services like VDI and mail. Actually, both DC are independent interconnect with MPLS. The idea the managers came up with was to build a layer 2 interconnect, which I'm not a fan of. What would you do in that case? Implementing VXLAN would be overkill at our scale, I think. We, quote unquote, just have maybe 1,000 VMs, including the VDI. Okay. To me, that's a sizable environment. I work with customers that only have a couple hundred VMs and they still have a DCI. So I would say that VXLAN is a very good replacement, or it is the ideal way to do your DCI. That's what it's designed to do. So I'm moving a lot of customers away from OTV and to VXLAN. I've got 4 active projects right now at varying levels of complexity where we're doing just that. They already have a layer 2 DCI, and the layer 2 DCI, let's qualify what that actually means. A layer 2 DCI means that you are allowing communication from data center 1, like MAC addresses and things like that, to be, like if you want to move a virtual machine that's in data center 1 over to data center 2, the data center interconnect, that layer 2 interconnect that you're referencing, is going to be how that information is propagated between the two different data centers, which would allow a workload in data center 1 to be able to figure out how to get to data center 2 and be able to communicate. Now, what you're actually doing for that, when it comes to hooking into each data center, whether you're connecting your campus or your main LAN to each data center, how you're doing that, you didn't really go into a lot of detail on that piece. So I personally don't think it's a size or scale question. You didn't really give me any feedback as to why you're not a fan of it. But whatever your reasons are, they're your reasons, and I'm not going to argue that. What I will say is, if there are solutions like VXLAN out there that are pretty much purpose-driven to do that, that's why the capability of multi-pod and multi-site have been developed, and multi-fabric. So if your management has said, hey, this is what we need to do, VXLAN is a tool that will make that transition or that possible relatively easy. I would not go with an L2TP v3, an OTV. I would get a VXLAN connection up and running and take advantage of that DCI. I've got a lot of customers doing that today, and VXLAN is the way that they do that. So I think it's a good idea. Hi Rob, thank you for the valuable content you're providing and helping people. You're welcome. I have basic knowledge in IT. I am studying for the CCNA. If you are starting over, where would you do or study? Basically, what would be the best strategy to follow? Since you have been teaching, what is the best way to go by learning? Like things to do and don't things. Please be more informative in details that will help so much. Like should go get a home lab or packet tracer. How to retain the knowledge, get the first job, move up the chain, CCNA first, then VMware, etc. Basically, if you were to do it all over, how will you do it? Thank you so much and appreciate your insights. Okay, and this one got a thumbs up, and it was not for me, although I will heart it because it's a good question. So I will like those questions as they came through. My bad for not doing them earlier. So if I was to do it all over again, that's a good question. I'm not exactly sure, but so let's answer these kind of in the order you asked them. Like, should I go get a home lab or packet tracer? Well, out of the gate, I remember when I first got into IT, there was no money to go buy a home lab. It was packet tracer. So until you get into the industry and start making more money to where you can afford to go buy equipment, I would say don't spend your money unnecessarily just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so I would say go get packet tracer, download it. Don't have to be a Netacad student to download it nowadays. Download it and start learning basic networking. Once you've got a solid grasp on networking, I would say the next big thing for you to go do is obviously pass the CCNA. Because once you have a certification on your resume and you have a level of understanding, then you are marketable. And to answer your other question, how to retain the knowledge. So that's actually very, very simple. I get asked this question a lot in person and online, and the answer to that question is repetition, repetition, repetition. So I know you've probably heard the saying of practice makes perfect. I disagree with that statement. Practice makes permanent. So in other words, the more you practice a particular skill set, the more comfortable you'll become with it, and the faster to be able to remember what it is you need to do and where you need to do it. That's what I would say. The more you practice, the more you're going to cover it. So as you're going through the CCNA blueprint, and I don't have it in front of me. So for example, if you spent the time to go learn layer 2 networking, and you can do all the things layer 2, right? You've labbed the heck out of it in packet tracer. You feel comfortable creating VLANs and trunks and port channels, and you know how to change the root bridge and how to look at it and identify what the root port is, what the designated bridge is, all that type of stuff, that's a good sign. Now take that information and continue, always build some sort of layer 2 infrastructure in any lab you're building, and then take that and start doing routing. Static routing, recursive static routes, default routing, and then get into, learn how to static route 3, 4, 5 routers away. Make sure you understand all the little things you need to do to get bidirectional traffic working. Then step it up a notch and start understanding dynamic routing. I would say RIP is not a protocol that you're going to see much anymore in the industry from a certification perspective. However, it's still out there. So I would spend a little bit of time on RIP, like understand how it works and how to implement it, how to verify it, what makes it different than all the other, do a compare and contrast between it and all the other routing protocols. Do the same with OSPF, EIGRP, ISIS, and BGP. Not necessarily in that order, but I would be basically comfortable at a base level to where you understand how each protocol works. In other words, learn just enough out of the gate to understand how the protocol works and to get basic routing reachability per protocol online. If you can do that per protocol, then you've already gone further than some people already do. And if you know each protocol, you're going to be that better off. Now, at the same time, whenever you're spinning up a new site, if you're adding add a location to your packet tracer lab, right? Build it out, and then anytime you build a new location, add in a couple switches and a couple PCs and grow your network as you go. Always make sure to have some sort of VLAN and trunking and spanning tree in that, so that you are always taking what you already learned and already are comfortable with and adding that to your existing lab. If you keep doing that and keep going over and over and over again, you'll get to the point where you just know what to do and where to do it. And it'll be practice makes permanent, and you become that much more proficient in the setup. And then you can take at a certain point in time, especially when you pass your CCNA and you get past that point and you're starting to move into CCNP and things like that, you're going to find that packet tracer becomes a blocking point because of the lack of support for any type of advanced routing and things like that. That's the point in time where I would say you should probably look at buying a server, or if you're, depending on how money is in your budget, maybe it would be easier to run GNS3 on your computer. However, I don't personally use GNS3, and I haven't used it in probably 4 or 5 years now. I've been strictly EVE-NG. So at this point in time, I would probably start looking for a affordable in your budget server, to where you could buy the server, and the server is going to give you 2 major areas that you're going to be able to get strong in. You're going to get an introduction to VMware, so virtualization using ESXi, and then you're also going to be able to download and work with EVE-NG. So I would recommend you do that. That would give you a leg up, because now you're going to have to understand how VMware works, the compute, a little bit of storage, a little bit of networking. So now you're going to be able to talk network with the network folks, as well as server talk with the server folks or the systems team, and you'll be able to build off of that. And there's a lot of free resources out online. When it comes to getting the operating systems, you can download Windows and Linux for free, right? You get eval copies of both Windows and Linux. If you want to go, if you have a little bit of budget, I would say buy the server. And I just bought a video, I just launched a video on how to spec out a server. So buy a server that's going to give you the specs or give you the performance that you need. That might be, you have to do some research and figure out what all those little terms and acronyms mean. Xeon and 8-core and 10-core. Those are going to be things that you're going to have to figure out. You can ask here, and I'll do my best to try to answer your questions. But I often find the best way to understand something is just to do some research and see what's out there, because you're going to have to do that anyway in the real world. You can ask people, but sometimes doing your own research is sometimes better than just asking a question. So then you'll be able to download and install ESXi. You'll start to be able to build virtual machines. You'll start to work with those virtual machines. And then once you've started that process, then you'll understand more than just basic networking. You'll be dual pronged. And then if you wanted to go down the route of doing the VMware stuff, you'd be able to do that. VMware is a very popular platform. It's literally everywhere nowadays. I more often see that than I see Hyper-V, but Hyper-V is still out there. Maybe learn both, right? How to move up the chain. Moving up the chain is a challenge for a lot of folks, and the only thing I can tell you to do is, when it comes to that, you have to work with whoever your manager is and understand, depending on how you want to move up the chain, what is it that I need to do in order to do that? What are the tangible but also obtainable goals that I need to hit in order to make that happen? And that's a conversation you have to have with your manager, and because the manager is going to be the one that signs off on the promotion or you moving from one team to the other. Maybe you have to leave your job that you're in to go to work for another company because there is no ability for you to move from one team to the other. I have seen where there are ceilings in certain companies where once you're in this team, that's it. Network, maybe maybe they don't allow promotion. I don't know, but that's basically what I would recommend you do. What I'm just describing to you is what I would do if I had to do it all over again. I would start at the bottom and work my way up, because that's the only way I know how to do it. It's what I know. It's what worked for me. And to be honest with you, if I was to leave the IT industry and say go into marketing or finance, I'd have to do the same thing, right? You'd have to start off at the bottom. You'd have to start learning, understanding how the industry works, educate yourself, and that's all I would do. Now that I've learned how to learn, I probably would excel in pretty much anything that I would put my mind to. I would sit down, I'd have to understand finance, I'd have to go understand how all that stuff works. Whether it's that, or if I wanted to become a lawyer, I'd have to, go to law school and go pass the bar. I'd have to go do all the things that are required in order for that to happen. And it just would take some time to do that. And that's really, at the end of the day, that's the bottom line. Okay, so network assessments and discoveries. This is an old video. Good video. Thank you for your comment. Got a couple more here. So, I recently got my CCNA. I want to be a network engineer, currently working as an IT project manager, tech support level 3 role with some networking. My goal is to become a remote networking engineer making 6 figures. Right now, my job is 75% remote, making less than 6 figures. I want my next job to be 100% remote. What cert skill set should I learn next? Thinking CCNP, maybe VMware. Is there another cert skill set that you would recommend? If you need any more information, please ask. I think your targeting is correct. CCNP is definitely a next level, because one thing that you're going to find is once you are 100% remote, you're going to find that when you're not in the office, I don't want to say out of sight, out of mind necessarily, but there's going to be a level of what's the word I'm looking for? Where you're going to be not sheltered, but you're going to have to be your own boss to a certain extent. Time management, making sure you're getting things done in a certain amount of time, things like that. These are going to be things that you're going to be more self-sufficient and more self-reliant. And it was a challenge for me when I first started working remotely, but I wanted to work remotely, so I put in whatever effort I needed to. So there are times where it'll be the middle of the afternoon, and I just, my brain and my headspace, can't wrap my head around whatever it is I'm trying to work through. So because I work 100% remotely, with the occasional having to go to the office for a function, I will commonly just do that. You have to be not be your own boss necessarily, but you'll have to pay attention to how long you're spending on different things and stuff like that. So VMware is not a bad way to do it. I don't know what your job is necessarily, but if you're looking to get into network engineering, the moment you get out of support, like operational support, once you get out of that and being in charge of a project, which seems like you've got time management's probably going to be something you're pretty good at, then it's going to be one of those things where you're going to have to there's going to be some, I'm sure there's going to be some level of needing to get stronger in certain areas, but that's just nature of the beast. But beyond that, VMware would be a good way to do that. If that's what it is that your job would require. Sometimes I've had to learn other things that I did not plan on learning. And it's not because I just have terrible foresight. It's really because my manager comes to me and says, "Hey, this project just dropped, and you have the most availability of anybody on the team. Can you take this on?" Where it requires me to go study and learn something. Okay, sure, no problem. It might take me a little longer than what's expected because I'm having to learn, but you know what? You're learning. So hopefully that answers your question. If you want to clarify or add some in there, please do so. Let's see here. Oh yeah, I remember this one. Rob suffers from the same issue a lot of techs suffer from: people skills. He doesn't want to answer questions the way the user asked it and comes up with excuses on why he doesn't answer by blaming the user and question. Be honest, you're annoyed by people easily, Rob. On top of it, Rob gets annoyed when someone doesn't ask a question the way he thinks they should. You should check your attitude. You might be good with Cisco and networking, but your people skills leave much to be desired. Okay. Interesting. So normally I don't read negative feedback, but you know what? That's okay. I don't call out the people that leave negative feedback or comment in a negatively scoped manner, but that's okay. Be honest, you're annoyed by people easily, Rob. I'm really not. So I think I'm going to go on some assumption here that there are some times when the way that a question is asked, I don't have enough information to give a proper answer back. So I have to think through my experience database and go, okay, like I was talking about that DMVPN VRF question. I sometimes have to go based off of what I do know and speak to that. If I don't know something, then it's harder for me to answer it. Because if I don't know something, it's like, yes, I can BS my way through some things, but in this industry, it's very easy to fact check somebody. On top of it, Rob gets annoyed when someone doesn't ask a question the way he thinks they should. So people can ask the question however they want. And that's typically how it comes. And it's my job as the channel creator and administrator, if you will. It's my job to try to decipher what it is that they're asking. And sometimes deciphering what they're asking is challenging. So you should check your attitude. Okay, well, apparently this person didn't like the way I responded to something or the way I said something, which is, that's more their view of my way I'm describing something. And sometimes I'm being blunt and saying that I have had people come to me in the past and send me emails and tie up, or they're trying to get me to give them one-on-one advice, which I don't think is a good idea. If someone is asking for my advice or a suggestion or guidance on something, I typically like them to ask the question in the comments so that I can answer it and everybody can benefit from it. Because more often than not, they're not the only one that wants that question answered, or maybe they didn't even think they wanted to ask that question. Somebody else did. They're like, oh, that's a good question. I didn't even think of that. And then I provide my response. So if you think I have a negative attitude, there are times when I get pissed off and I have a piss poor attitude. I'm human just like everybody else. I could get pissed off at this question or this comment or whatever you want to call it, but I'm not, because at the end of the day, it's just that. It's somebody. I'm not sure if you're trying to poke the bear, but the one thing I learned a long time ago is I can only control what I can control. So people skills leave much to be desired. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but there is a point in time in everybody's day or everybody's week where they've had enough of whatever's going on, and sometimes they just get short with people. It happens. So if that's what I have no idea what specific thing I did or said triggered you to think that way, but I can't control that. It's the way you view it, which is your call. Sorry you feel that way, but but I think everybody's people skills can be improved, right? I mean, that's just nature in general. So all I can tell you is thank you for the view. And number two, if you're that dissatisfied with whatever it is that I'm doing on the channel, you don't have to watch it. If you choose that Rob Riker's Tech channel is not the content you want to be watching for whatever reason, the beauty of YouTube is you don't have to watch any of the content. So that's that. It's kind of trying to be tactful here, but at the same point in time, if you don't like what I've got to say, you don't have to listen to anything that I say. So that's probably the most respectful response I can give you. Now, a friend of mine told me I should tell you to go pound sand, but at the same point in time, you don't improve as a person if all you do is tell people that give you negative feedback to go take a long jump off a short cliff. That doesn't get anybody anywhere. So, sorry you feel that way, but it's I'm not going to apologize for anything that I've said because it's what I've said. And if I start backpedaling, then I start to lose any type of respect that I've earned. And if I've lost your respect, sorry to hear that too. But my job is not to make everybody happy, and I learned that a long time ago. If you don't like it, bye bye. I hope you stick around, but if you don't, I hope everything works out well for you. What kind of packet captures on an ES6i host? What kind of virtual routers are those? They're probably CSR 1000Vs because that's an older video, based on what I'm seeing. Let's see. Tech support Thursday ticket 19. Thanks for answering my question about CML images. I believe that once you pay the CML subscription, you can still use those images after 1 year without the need to pay again. Still looking for server requirements to run the topologies you mentioned, a quiet enough server. What's your opinion on a Dell R720? Would this be suitable? Also recommended RAM and storage. Yeah, so the CML license itself, I don't know if you can pull the images off that, to be honest with you. So what I do is I still download. I don't know if you can export them. I haven't tried. They very well could be, or they might have a lockdown to where you can't. What I do know is there's the option to download the older versions of code, and that's usually what I do, and I import them into Eve. So, but if the 1 year subscription is expired, the CML, the nodes will not boot. So just be aware of that. I did put a video out on how to spec out a server, so hopefully that answered that question. But a Dell R720, it's a good server. It's widely deployed. I've seen quite a few of them in production and on eBay. It should be suitable, but the key thing you want to pay attention to isn't necessarily storage. Although you do want a fair amount of that. I would say a few hundred gigs of storage space is probably more than sufficient for you to get what you want to get done. Even if you wanted to add in, like, I have a 4 terabyte iSCSI SAN in my home lab that I leverage, and that does the job I need it to do. RAM, I would say 64 at a very bare minimum, but I always recommend 128 gigs. Just as what I recommend. Storage, if you can get a terabyte, great. Sometimes if you can get a terabyte SSD, that would probably be ideal because it's going to give you pretty good I/O performance. Hopefully that answers your question. But I'm actually looking at some Dell and HP. Dell, I think it's an R720, and an HP ProLiant DL580 is what I'm looking at right now, and I'm trying to determine whether or not it's. I'm looking at core count. I'm looking at multiple CPUs, 2 or more like 4 at 10 cores a pop, which will give me 40 cores at say 2 or 2.2 or 2.4 gigahertz as a clock rate, which would give me like almost 100 gigahertz of compute, which is what I'm looking for. So, data center, VXLAN, VPC with and VXLAN with BGP, L2BP, and eBPN. Can you use VPC and SP network? Like VPC members are P or PE routers. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to. I just haven't seen it in production, and I've never thought about it that way, so probably. Tech Support Thursday, Ticket 19. Hi, Rob. After earning CCNP, Encore, and an RC, which cert is more important to focus on? In salad or in sandwich? So SD-WAN or the design? Or should I go CCIE directly? What do you recommend? That's job related. So if you're more on the pre-sale side of the house, I would say design is probably better for you. But if you're someone that's still deploying and you're deploying SD-WAN or supporting SD-WAN, SD-WAN would probably be a pretty good choice. But my direction has gone now more the what it is I'm doing day to day. Like if I'm going to study for something, it's something that I'm working with actively. Where before it was, let's just go learn this because I want to round out my technical knowledge. So it depends on what it is I'm trying to do. I work with a lot of different technologies day in and day out. So I tend to, I learn a little here and a little there. And I've also learned that I don't need to rush through anything. I need to take my time and really understand it first, which definitely helps with, what's what I'm looking for, with retention of the knowledge instead of trying to run through it and going, I don't really remember how that works. I can recall most things off the top of my head, but I also take really good notes. That also helps. Should I go for CCA directly? You can. Nothing's stopping you. Technically, you can earn it after Encore. However, I would say with the way that they have set up the new CCIE lab exams, if you were to go for all of the concentration exams, so an RC, SD-WAN, and design, I would say that's probably a good idea, because then you're going to be tested on design, you're going to be tested on SD-WAN, you're going to be tested on advanced routing, so you're going to want to know this stuff anyway. So if I was coming up through and CCNP was on my radar, I would be doing all four, which I still want to take SD-WAN and the design exam just because I want to round out my technical knowledge. I'd say that's a good idea, and that's for any track, right? I would take all the concentration exams because each one of the concentration exams at the CCNP level will help you translate your knowledge into the CCA lab. It makes you that much more well-rounded. So knockout, you don't have to go get the certs, right? You don't have to go take the exam for SD-WAN or the design exam, as long as you understand what's being asked of you and you've covered the material. As long as you have the requisite knowledge to go attempt a lab, go attempt a lab. I hope you're successful in that. ASA Basics 1 initial configuration setup, love it. I'm glad it helped. SD-WAN 17 service VPN 1 BGP peering and setup and route propagation. I think I had some weirdness going on vEdge 1 with just OSPF running and redistributing OMP. My switch 16 was receiving all the correct routes, site 3, 4, etc. In the vEdge 1, when I enabled BGP with redistribute OSPF flag, the original OMP routes were not included. It seems it didn't want to redistribute routes that were OSPF external routes. Redistribution of OMP into BGP worked fine. I am also wondering why you would, with BGP, redistribute the OMP routes via their redistribution into OSPF. OSPF to BGP seems to be cleaner to redistribute OMP into OSPF and just use OSPF for loopback and intra-area or site communications. I will have to go back and watch that video because I honestly don't remember. But typically speaking, and I might have had a different line of thinking back then, but normally, if OMP is being used over the tunnel to advertise the routing information, you're going to, it'd be cleaner to go OMP directly into the protocol. So if you're learning OMP routes from a remote site, and that remote site is using OSPF, and you're taking OSPF and redistributing it into OSPF, and then you bring those routes via OMP back to the local site, you should just go OMP into the routing protocol you want to advertise them into, because that's how a router does it. So, yeah, I'll have to go back and watch and then respond to your question, because I honestly don't remember. Well, if you have any follow-on information on that, leave a comment and I can qualify. Service Provider Intra ASL VPN 5. Thanks, Riker. Especially for all the examples you provide during your videos. If you don't mind, could you please guide me on regard to the hardware you have in your Eve simulator? I'm thinking if I bought a gamer PC, Ryzen 7 8-core 16 threads, 32 RAM, would support a two simple DC sites with 5 or 6 devices each. I'm intended to use GNS3, thanks in advance. That probably will do the job, but if you're going to be spending that much money on a gamer PC, and I honestly have no idea how much any of that stuff runs, I would still recommend a server, because that's what its purpose built is to do. But that's just my opinion. So, but it should work if with two small locations. That should be fine. So I typically go for 2 8-core CPUs, and then 128 gigs of RAM, Intel Xeon processors. That's what I typically target on the UCSC 220s. But if I'm going to go, I'm actually looking at doing 4 CPUs, 10 cores each. I'm looking for more compute. So that's just what I'm dealing with today. Ooh, there's a lot of questions on this one. How to spec out a server for your home IT lab. Thanks, Rob. Very informative. If you have space or noise considerations, if you have good luck with Dell, I have had good luck with Dell workstation lineup. I've built 2 machines on the T5810 and T7610. These let you use the same Xeon CPUs as the servers. Yep. Don't forget to check the power requirements. On some of the bigger rack servers, you need multiple 220-volt power plugs, and that's normally not in a personal residence. I agree with that. Thanks, Rob. Been running my VMware EVE-NG off my gaming laptop. I'm able to load your SD-WAN lab and run everything. The laptop is silent. My laptop is 16 cores, 64 gigs of RAM, so I can't run the biggest of labs, but I can run it up to for CCNA and CCNP. That's awesome, man. My comment disappeared. And no, I don't delete comments unless they are extremely vulgar, and then I get rid of them. Not sure what happened. Anyway, I mainly wanted to point out that the flash-based SIMC on the older UCS servers I don't think is really a problem. I believe you can access all of the same settings from what I can see using between SSH to the SIMC IP and or using the Java KVM console. Yeah, I mean, it's possible. It's just a pain, and I don't like dealing with it. To each their own. Dell R810 or Dell R820 is what I'm envisioning. Okay? Dude, good video. Just the information I need to start learning. Thanks a lot, Rob. I'm sure you've answered lots of questions. I hope so. Okay, nearing the top. SD-WAN 19, Service VPN 1 NAT, Dynamic PAT, Local Internet Breakout. Rob, I see in your videos VEdge 3 and 4 don't see the default propagate by VEdge, but this video I see. How can you do that? I will have to go back and look. SD-WAN stuff I haven't covered in over a year, so I honestly don't remember. I will have to go back and look. Real world networking, what it's like to be a real network engineer. Great idea. Really appreciate your work. Thank you. More comments on how to spec out a server. Very informative video, sir. Hi, Rob. Thank you for the video. How about the cost due to power consumption? How do you take that into consideration? Well, I asked my wife how much the power bill is every month, and it fluctuates. It's kind of expensive, but the money I make between YouTube and some other revenue streams that I've got, it covers the cost. So it's it shakes out. I am usually positive at the end of the month. I make more than I spend, so that's always a good thing. But power will be something to take into consideration, especially if you're running a server that's on all the time. Yes, you could power things down and then wait for them to power up if you're doing that, but that's your call. Thanks again, Riker. Yeah, the gamer PC was a suggestion, since some of us have no possibility to afford such a nice real hardware like the ones you showed. But totally, CPU and RAM need to be the primary targets to allow the proper growing and scalability when creating complex topologies. I'm living in Brazil. I'm Chilean, and the hardware here is hard to get. Yep, that I'm sure that is, and that's one of the reasons why I put things the way that I do, because I know not everybody's able to go out to eBay and just buy whatever they want. So I completely get that. And then the last comment here is from when I passed the lab exam. Congratulations. Thank you. So that is it for Tech Support Thursday. Ticket 20. Holy cow, 20 are tickets already. I will go back and review the SD-WAN videos and try to answer them the best I can. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or you have a suggestion, please leave it in the comment section below of this video. I am working on actually I'll show you a little preview of what it is that I'm working on, just because I think it's cool. Go ahead and refresh the screen real quick. All right, let's go ahead and change this is the topology I'm currently working on developing for the real-world networking, the technology course that covers a lot of the technologies. This is the topology that I'm currently developing. It's got a little bit of work left to do. It's going to allow me to cover a lot of different things. So I'm hoping that you guys will take advantage of it, and you'll be happy to play with it. It takes a lot of work, but my schedule for work has been rather busy lately, so it's been difficult to try to pin down time to do stuff. But this is coming in the near future, so please be patient with me, and I will get stuff out to you as soon as I possibly can. With that being said, I want to thank everybody for stopping by and hanging out with me. If you haven't already done so, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch all of you guys in the next video.